Hey guys, thanks for joining me on this painting. This next painting is going to be a dog. Her name is Jasmine. Her name was Jasmine. Owner is Gordan Darraugh, and Gordan has asked me to not only paint Jasmine, but he's also asked me to narrate. I don't really do narration, so I'm going to do the best I can. Anyway, I'm going to try to make it interesting for any painters that might be watching. So first thing I'm going to do is sketch her out on some watercolor paper. And this is the standard Strathmore 12 by 12, 140 pound cold press paper. Next I'm going to mount it on this foam board. Got about a 1/4 inch foam board here. Nice little piece. So we'll mount it on there. I've got my standard color palette. It's a little portable style. I love it. It's just easy to use. I'm using that. And then in terms of brushes, I've got a nice large wash brush. It's a round brush. I'll be using that. And then I have a number of different dagger brushes, but this is a small dagger brush. I'm going to be using that. And then finally, somewhere in here, there it is, I've got a nice little teeny tiny little brush, and that's going to be for all those intricate details. So without further ado, let's get started. I'll sketch her out, and then we'll start putting some paint on. Okay, well, I'm back. That was quick. I've got her all sketched out, and I've got her on the, I'm using a table easel. I've got about 3 or 4 different easels, but this one fits nicely on the table. So what I'm doing here is really just wetting the paper. With watercolor, you got to go around all the areas where you're going to start to put paint for that, what's called initial wash, and you just got to wet it. So that's what I've done, and as you'll see, when you put paint on wet paper, it kind of spreads out nice, and it allows the other colors to blend. See that? See how it's blending there? So it works out really well. And I mean, the other thing I'm doing is I try not to put the brush on every single spot. You want to kind of leave some white area behind it. The other thing is in the foreground where I'm going now, you can see I'm adding green. It really doesn't matter. That's going to be her body. But I needed it to be dark because she's going to be in the shade up front there in the foreground. So I said, you know what? Rather than worrying right now with a brown or a tan color, I'll be able to cover that up, that green. I just needed something dark there to represent the background. And this is all done in layers. So not unlike oil and acrylic, watercolor is very same. You're just going to put it on in layers. So just kind of getting the base tones in now. They're kind of the light colors, and then we'll move on here in a second to once it dries, we'll start to put in some darker colors. And but anyway, dealing with background right now, that's basically it. I'm going to speed it up a little bit at this point. So here we go. Okay, well, there's the background. So now it's time to put a little bit of color on Jazz herself. And like many things in life, in order to get it to turn out right at the end, you got to pay strict attention to what you do up front. So in this case, we're just putting light tones everywhere. You know, I look at the drawing, I look at the photograph of Jazz, and I see where she's dark in areas and she's light in other areas, and I realize that those are the areas where I've got to focus those initial tones, and then she'll turn out right once we put the mid-tones on here in a few minutes, and then in the end when I put the dark tones on. So what I'm going to show you now is what she looks like, kind of paint by numbers almost, and you wonder how in the world that's going to turn out. But that's how it looks after that very first initial layer. So now I'm kind of using a little bit darker colors, some mid-tones I like to call them, and going back in now over those areas again, but paying attention to the photograph and making sure that I keep the dark areas getting progressively darker without a whole lot of detail, at least now, and then the lighter areas, trying to preserve those as well. So it's pretty dramatic here in a second when I show you what the end of phase 2 ends up looking like, which is this the second go-round, which is going to make Phase 3 look absolutely amazing here in a second. She's quite beautiful, and she's turning out really, really beautiful. So look at that. I like that. I think that looks really great. So here I am now in the final phase, and just adding detail, a little darker color here and there, trying to put some whiskers and some hair, trying to work on that nose, get a little bit of shine where it's supposed to be. The light is coming from the left side, so it's darker on the right, so got to pay attention to that. Anyway, I'm going to speed it up toward the end here. Hope you enjoy. And again, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, I ask that you take a minute and do that. But thank you again for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed painting it. Okay.